It's the 22nd of December 2025. This is a brand new edition of Newsfirst Primetime News coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo, bringing you tonight's bulletin for the Newsfirst team. I am Jaimal Ratnayaka.
And I am Hashini Patirana. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for tonight.
Indian External Affairs Minister arrives in Sri Lanka with Cyclone relief package. High-level Chinese delegation to visit Sri Lanka tomorrow. 121 global economists urge suspension of Sri Lanka's debt payments and fresh restructuring. Police constable granted bail after clash with MP Shantha Padmakumara. Train service resumes on Kankasanture-Anuradhapura route after 24 days. Former SJB local government candidate shot dead in Ambalangoda. Sirasa TV, Shakti TV, TV1 and Newsfirst win big at state awards.
On to our top story for tonight. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, visiting Sri Lanka as a special envoy of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, arrived in Colombo this evening.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his delegation landed at Katunayake Airport at around 5:40 p.m. aboard an Indian Air Force aircraft. They were received by Sri Lanka's Deputy Minister of Tourism Ruwan Ranasinghe before departing for Colombo. The visit was announced earlier today by India's Ministry of External Affairs. Quote, the visit underscores India's neighbourhood first policy and takes place in the context of Operation Sagar Bandhu launched to address the devastation caused by Cyclone Ditwa. End quote. According to the statement, Dr. S. Jaishankar will hand over India's relief package for communities affected by Cyclone Ditwa, which has caused widespread destruction across Sri Lanka. India was the first country to respond after the disaster, deploying aid and relief measures under Operation Sagar Bandhu.
Meanwhile, a senior Chinese delegation is scheduled to arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow for an official visit aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation.
A senior Chinese delegation led by Wang Junzhong, a member of the 20th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and secretary of the CPC Committee of Xizang Autonomous Region, is scheduled to arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow for an official visit aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation. The delegation will remain in the country until the 25th December, with discussions expected to focus on enhancing mutual support and deepening strategic ties between the two nations.
The World Bank says that damage from Cyclone Ditwa in Sri Lanka is estimated at $4.1 billion.
Cyclone Ditwa, which struck Sri Lanka in late November, has inflicted an estimated $4.1 billion in direct physical damage to building and contents, agriculture and critical infrastructure, according to a World Bank Group Global Rapid Post Disaster Damage Estimation or GRADE report that was released today. The figure, equivalent to around 4% of Sri Lanka's GDP, captures the immediate blow to the nation's physical assets and underscores the scale of recovery ahead. The central province absorbed the largest hit, with Kandy district damages estimated at $689 million, driven primarily by flooding and to a lesser extent by landslides. Across the country, infrastructure, including roads, bridges, railways and water supply networks, accounts for the largest share of damage at $1.735 billion or 42% of the total damage, severing connectivity and access to markets and essential services.
A coalition of leading economists and academics has called for the immediate suspension of Sri Lanka's external sovereign debt payments. They also called for a new resilient-oriented restructuring after Cyclone Ditwa unleashed a climate catastrophe they say has exposed fundamental weaknesses in the country's latest IMF deal.
121 experts, including Joseph Stiglitz, a public policy analyst and a recipient of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences, argue that Sri Lanka's 17th IMF sovereign debt restructuring, executed under a 48-month extended fund facility, offers only limited debt service relief and fails to provide a sustainable solution to the debt crisis, leaving the country extremely vulnerable to external shocks, especially climate-induced disasters. The Economists say Sri Lanka now faces a severe economic shock triggered by the cyclone, extensive flooding and landslides damaging infrastructure, livelihoods and key economic sectors. This environmental emergency is poised to absorb and potentially exceed the extremely limited fiscal space created by the current restructuring package. They further note that additional external debt is already being taken on from the IMF, and more lending to cope with disaster impacts is likely, compounding medium-term risks. The statement underscores the IMF's own acknowledgement that Sri Lanka's route to debt sustainability remains knife-edged, saying targets are being met narrowly while social spending benchmarks were missed. With diminished revenues, rising reconstruction costs and increased import needs, the group warns that projected gains from the restructuring could be quickly undermined. According to the academics and the economists, the existing restructuring, modest, conditional and tied to uncertain macroeconomic outcomes, is inadequate to protect the vulnerable majority from recurrent climate and external shocks. By prioritizing debt service continuity over deep debt relief, the IMF perpetuates structural exposure of the economy and population to future disasters. Continuing to impose debt repayment obligations under these conditions fails to consider Sri Lanka's capacity to service debt based on foreign exchange earnings. Onerous debt servicing is undermining efforts to rebuild lives, restore agriculture, repair infrastructure and provide social protection. The experts demand an immediate suspension of external sovereign debt payments and a new restructuring calibrated to the current climate-driven emergency. They propose to recognize climate-driven disasters as systemic, not exceptional shocks, provide significant debt cancellation without punitive conditions to free fiscal space for disaster recovery, social protection, reconstruction and development, prioritize human welfare, environmental protection and long-term viability over strict adherence to financial obligations to external creditors. They claim that only a fundamental rethinking of the global debt regime based on justice and sustainability will give Sri Lanka a realistic chance to recover from climate impacts and build an equitable future. Research by the campaign group Debt Justice found that after the 2024 debt restructuring deal, which involved some investors accepting a haircut on expected payments, private sector creditors were still on course to make 40% more profit lending to Sri Lanka than to the US government.
When 121 leading economists and scholars speak about Sri Lanka's economy, let's recall the past. Do you remember April 12, 2022? That was the day Sri Lanka announced a default of foreign debt repayments. Some said the country had gone bankrupt. Why did this happen? It happened because at critical moments the right decisions were not taken. Instead, a handful of individuals managed the economy for personal gain, steering the nation into crisis. Anyone who reads the Supreme Court ruling of November 14, 2023 will understand what these individuals did to the country. What did they do? A large share of Sri Lanka's external debt was raised through international sovereign bonds, borrowings from the open market, not concessional loans negotiated between governments. Back in 2007, when revenue levels looked strong, Sri Lanka entered global markets and began borrowing heavily. These loans were not cheap. They carried high interest rates, and failure to repay on time meant even higher costs. The letter signed by 121 economists and scholars explains this clearly. They point out that private creditors who lent to Sri Lanka earned 40% more profit than what the US government would have earned lending the same amount. That alone shows the scale of these debts. On February 18, 2022, knowing the country was running out of money, Sri Lanka still repaid $500 million on a sovereign bond. Months later, the economy collapsed. At that time, questions arose. Who owned these bonds? And where did all this borrowed money go? Economists repeatedly highlighted that these loans were not invested in revenue-generating projects. What came before? Billions of dollars borrowed at high interest were poured into projects that could not generate income. Expressways, towers and ports. You remember those. The benefits? Enjoyed by a few. The way they were obtained? Well documented. Then came 2015. A new group came to power, promising to fix things. What did they do? They triggered the infamous central bank bond scam, causing an immediate loss of 8 billion Sri Lankan rupees to the Employees Provident Fund. The full damage is still unaccounted for. That scandal was another blow to the economy. Then came 2020. The former rulers returned. What was their first move? They granted sweeping tax cuts, wiping out a huge portion of government revenue. Within 2 years, the country was bankrupt. Experts and officials warned repeatedly. They said, go to the IMF. The advice was ignored. They said, don't pay the USD 500 million bond in February 2022. Again, ignored. Finally, when foreign reserves hit rock bottom, imports were banned. Who felt the pain first? Farmers. Chemical fertilizer and agrochemicals were banned, and yet $6.9 million was paid for a Chinese fertilizer shipment. Eventually, people took to the streets. Those who drove the country into disaster were sent home. What happened next? The coalition that came to power shifted the entire burden onto the people. Crushing taxes, skyrocketing fuel prices, soaring cost of living. The people responded in the last presidential and general elections. And today, those who bankrupted the economy, who used public wealth for private luxury, who played musical chairs with power, are now sitting together, waiting for the country to fall again, predicting dates of collapse. While ordinary citizens work tirelessly to rebuild, what are these people doing?
The International Monetary Fund said that Sri Lanka's capacity to repay is adequate but subject to significant risks.
Sri Lanka's ability to repay its obligations remains adequate but subject to significant risks, according to the latest IMF assessment, which underscores the fragile balance between progress and vulnerability. The IMF notes that this assessment hinges on successful implementation of the Extended Fund Facility Program, a cornerstone of Sri Lanka's economic recovery strategy. With high debt levels and gross financing needs, the fund warns that debt sustainability risks remain elevated, reinforcing the urgency of strengthening institutions and building frameworks for lasting fiscal stability. Capacity to repay indicators have temporarily deteriorated compared to the fourth review. Under the Combined Rapid Financing Instrument and EFF, IMF credit outstanding is projected to peak at 3.1% of GDP in 2027, unchanged from the previous review. The report calls for institutional strengthening and fiscal discipline to ensure resilience against external shocks and long-term stability.
Sri Lanka rising again. Roads, reservoirs, dams, canals and farmlands damaged by the recent disaster are now being rapidly restored.
The Northern Railway line between Kankasanture and Anuradhapura was temporarily suspended on the 27th due to flooding. Train services resumed at 6 this morning, with the Yal Rani train from Kankasanture operating on the line. The Yal Rani arrived at the Anuradhapura railway station at around 10:30 this morning. The train, which departed Anuradhapura at 2:30 p.m., reached the Kankasanture railway station at 6:53 this evening. Meanwhile, the Hangwella, Bandara, Anikatan Canal in Dambagahapitiya was renovated by villagers in the Ududumbara Divisional Secretariat. A section of the road from Kallar to Neelapola in the Serunuvara Police Division has once again been damaged due to the overflow of the Mavilaru Reservoir. The Army, the Irrigation Department and the National Water Supply and Drainage Board are taking steps to carry out urgent repairs to the dam.
At the State Television Awards, Sirasa TV, Newsfirst, Shakti TV and TV1 were honoured with multiple accolades. This year's prestigious event, recognizing excellence in television for the years 2021 to 2024, was held at the auditorium of the National Museum in Colombo.
Award winners at the State Television Awards. Best Investigative News Reporting for 2021, Vindana Prasad Karunaratna of Newsfirst. Best Investigative Reporting in Tamil Media for 2021, Riaz Haris of Newsfirst. Best Music Direction for a Teledrama for 2021, Burl Prajiv of Shakti TV. Best Tamil Music Program for 2021, Shakti Superstar, Kanagaraj Dinesh Kumar. Best Tamil Documentary Program, Tamil Media for 2021, Sudarshan Kanagaraja of Shakti TV. Best Investigative News Reporting for 2022, Lakmal Kirindigala of Newsfirst. Best Program Promoting National Unity in Sinhala for 2023, Patikada, hosted by Asoka Dias of Newsfirst. Best Documentary Program in English Media for the year 2024, Merit Certificate, Asoka Dias of Newsfirst. Best Program Promoting National Unity in English Media for 2023, Sonali Vanigabaduge of Newsfirst. The Special Jury Award for the Best Musical Program in 2022 was won by Inbox, directed by Danesh Uppul and Viraj Jayamana. The award for the Best Musical Program in Sinhala for the year 2023 was awarded to the program Sajjayana, directed by Danesh Uppul, Viraj Jayamana and Saman Dhammika.
News First with the people.
News First. Main sponsor.
Valuable FD, the symbol of stability.
Hiran Khosla, who contested the last local government election under the Samagi Jana Balavegya for the Ambalangoda Urban Council, was shot dead this morning.
Two individuals reportedly arriving on a motorcycle carried out the shooting this morning. The assailants entered the showroom where Hiran Khosla was working as a manager and opened fire. Police stated that the suspects entered the showroom claiming they intended to purchase a television set. After the shooting, the suspects fled on the motorcycle, which was later found abandoned in the Adadola area by police. The deceased, 47-year-old Hiran Khosla, was a resident of Vidyala Mawatha, Ambalangoda. During the recent local government election, he represented the Samagi Jana Balavegya and contested for the Ambalangoda Urban Council. He also campaigned as a mayoral candidate during the election campaign. Meanwhile, police revealed that investigations indicate the victim maintained close ties with various organized criminal gangs.
The police constable attached to the Suryakanda police, who was allegedly involved in the altercation with NPP Ratnapura district MP Shanta Padmakumara, has been released on bail. Bail was granted after the constable was produced before the Ambilipitiya Magistrates Court.
The police constable, who currently serves at the Suryakanda police, was arrested this morning over allegations that he had assaulted National People's Power Ratnapura district MP Shanta Padmakumara. He was arrested on 3 charges, including unlawful obstruction and criminal coercion.
On the 20th of December, PC Susantha Hettiarachi, who is attached to the Suryakanda police, had completed his duties at around 7 p.m. and was headed towards his home in the Kolonna area, and along the way had met the parliamentarian and gotten into a verbal exchange with him. Thereafter, the parliamentarian lodged a complaint with regard to this incident. In addition, the constable attached to the Suryakanda police had made a call to the 119 police hotline, alleging that a group including the parliamentarian had assaulted him and stolen his motorcycle. We have received the initial reports into this matter from the judicial medical officer, and accordingly there is no sign of an assault on the police officer. With regard to the stealing of the motorbike, when a group of police officers investigated the site of the incident, they found the bike in close proximity to the said location. We now suspect whether the police officer made a false complaint. Therefore, investigations are continuing in this regard as to whether he made the complaint for a hidden personal agenda or whether a certain group coerced him into lodging the complaint.
This is the response received by MP Namal Rajapaksa, national organizer of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, during his visit to distribute books to a group of school children in the Anuradhapura district who have been affected by recent disasters.
The LOLC Divisavia, Obai Mamai Ape Ratai, or the You, Me, Our Nation social service program implemented to provide relief to people affected by the recent disasters commenced this morning. The program was held at the LOLC head office premises in Colombo.
During the COVID-19 crisis, the LOLC group extended vital support to communities across Sri Lanka by distributing dry rations to help improve living standards. Continuing its commitment to social welfare, LOLC also donated school bags and essential educational supplies to nearly 4,000 schools, ensuring that children had resources they need for learning. Today, LOLC launched another major social care initiative under the theme Divisavya, Obai Mamai Ape Ratai, or You, Me, Our Nation. This 10-day program will provide relief to families who lost their homes in the aftermath of Cyclone Ditra, focusing on 6 severely affected districts: Kandy, Matale, Kegol, Badulla, Nuwara and Ratnapura. Under this initiative, dry rations and essential items will be distributed to households that suffered complete housing damage. The program commenced this morning at LOLC head office with a multi-faith ceremony symbolizing unity and compassion in rebuilding lives. What is the purpose of LOLC Divisavya, You, Me, Our Nation social service program? This is the LOLC Group Chief Operating Officer Kitsiri Gunawardhana's explanation.
අද වෙනකොට කුඩා දරුවන් පාසල් යන දරුවන් තමන්ගේ පාසල් අහිමි වෙලා කඳවුරු වල ඉතාමත් දුක්ඛිත තත්වයකින් ජීවත් වෙනවා.
As of today, thousands of school children have lost access to their schools and are living in temporary camps under extremely difficult conditions. These children are the true victims of this tragedy. They have lost not only their homes but also their hopes for the future. Schools are the foundation for creating positive aspirations, and when that foundation is gone, the impact is profound. Recognizing this, the senior management of the LOLC group decided that immediate action was necessary. While we are already working with the Sirasa media network to provide dry rations and essential relief in the short term, we also believe in launching a long-term initiative. Our goal is to rebuild approximately 200 schools and fully restore those that have been completely destroyed, bringing them back to their original state. The LOLC group is prepared to invest significantly in this effort.
LOLC සමූහ ව්‍යාපාරය විශාල මුදලක් වැය කරලා ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නට මේ අවස්ථාවේදී අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
The Disaster Management Center is also joining hands with the LOLC Divisavya program.
As of today, the Divisavya program has allocated over 80 million rupees to provide essential dry rations and food supplies to 4,000 families across 69 divisional secretariat divisions. This initiative is only the beginning. We plan to launch several more programs to support affected communities. In addition, the LOLC group is committed to rebuilding approximately 200 to 300 schools that were either severely damaged or completely destroyed, restoring them to their original condition. It is important to remember that nature has taught us a very powerful lesson. This is not the first time that such disasters have occurred. Sri Lanka, like many countries around the world, has faced similar challenges before. Yet, in every instance, we have risen stronger, planned better, and worked tirelessly to rebuild. Our government too is actively planning for recovery.
Kapila Jayawardena, CEO and Managing Director of the LOLC Group, also shared his comments on the program.
This program is a continuation of LOLC's vision and mission of helping the population of Sri Lanka at times of a crisis. So currently we are facing a severe issue after the Ditwa incident, the flooding. Schools have got affected with the cyclone and the flooding, and we are reconstructing them. But before that, so the initial stage of the program is to help people who are in camps, who desperately need to survive, bare basic essentials to survive, and we are providing that. And the second stage is to help schools which have been affected by the cyclone and the flooding to reconstruct them. And after that, there is also another section. So the third stage would be to rebuild all the schools in safe areas.
With the launch of this program, essential food items Continuing the mission, the LOLC Divisavya program is to reach Yatiyanthota, Bulat Kohupitiya, Mavanalla, Aranayaka, Pasbage and Udapalata Divisional Secretary Divisions tomorrow in the Kegon district.
Sri Lanka's export sector has recorded an annual growth of 5.8% during the period from January to November 2025.
Export performance in November 2025 has increased to $1,364 million. Of this, merchandise export earnings amounted to $1,053 million, while service sector export earnings stood at $311 million, bringing the total export earnings to $1,364 million. The significance here is that compared to last year, we are seeing a growth of 5.8%. Over the past 11 months, particularly from January to November, Sri Lanka's export performance has grown to $15,776 million.
The Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra Flood Relief Initiative continues to support families affected by Cyclone Ditwa, with non-profit organizations contributing in numerous ways. Today, the Sri Narayana Guru Society of Sri Lanka donated 1 million rupees to the Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra Flood Relief Initiative.
The delegates of the Sri Narayana Guru Society of Sri Lanka visited the MTV headquarters this evening, where relief supplies for the Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra Flood Relief Initiative are being collected. During this visit, the Sri Narayana Guru Society presented a cheque of 1 million rupees towards the relief efforts of the Sahanayatra. Group Director of the Capital Maharaja Group, Shrivan Daniel, and other officials were also present at the occasion.
இன்று நாங்கள் இந்த சிரச சானயாத்ரா இந்த நிகழ்வுக்கு
We were planning to celebrate the annual Sri Narayana Guru festival yesterday, but that was before we learnt about this flood relief initiative. Considering the current situation in the country and seeing the suffering of the people, as well as seeing the efforts of the Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra Flood Relief Initiative reaching out to those in need, our committee decided to donate all the funds collected for the celebration towards this worthy cause. We also added a little extra to that amount to fully support this flood relief initiative.
The Sri Narayana Guru Society of Sri Lanka was established in 1980 in honour of the social reformer and spiritual Guru Sri Narayana Guru, who visited Sri Lanka in 1918 and 1926. The society has been carrying out educational, cultural, religious and humanitarian activities guided by the slogan, "One caste, one religion, one God for mankind." In 2009, the government of Sri Lanka issued a postage stamp to honor the social reform and spiritual work of the Sri Narayana Guru Society, which serves as a platform for uniting the Malayali community in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the DSI group also contributed towards the Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra donation drive today by handing over a relief package.
We decided to give you the donations to the Sirasa Sahanayatra merely because of and we basically trusted the process that you have implemented, and we focus on children's items on behalf of our group, and we, all the staff and the shop employees, all the people contributed enormously to donate the wanted people at this moment.
The US ambassador in Colombo is reportedly among 30 diplomats to be recalled as US President Donald Trump reshapes diplomacy. The United States is reportedly recalling its ambassador in Sri Lanka along with nearly 30 other career diplomats from ambassadorial and senior embassy posts worldwide as the Trump administration moves to realign America's diplomatic presence with its America First priorities, according to multiple international reports. The current US ambassador to Sri Lanka is Julie Chung, and she has been in the country since February 2022. The sweeping shake-up detailed in the latest internal State Department communications will end the tenures of chiefs of mission in at least 29 countries starting January. All affected diplomats were appointed during the Biden administration and had survived an initial purge in the early months of Trump's second term that primarily targeted political appointees. That changed last week when notices from Washington began landing in inboxes across the globe. Ambassadors serve at the pleasure of the president, typically for 3 to 4 years. Those recalled will not lose their foreign service status, but will return to Washington for reassignment. Africa bears the brunt of the reshuffle, with 13 countries affected, including Nigeria, Rwanda, Senegal and Uganda. The Asia-Pacific region follows with 6 changes, including Fiji, Laos, the Philippines and Vietnam. Europe sees 4 ambassadors recalled, with 2 each in Algeria and Egypt of the Middle East, and Nepal and Sri Lanka in South Asia, and Guatemala and Suriname in the Western Hemisphere are also impacted.
Officials have said that a Russian general has been killed in a car bombing in Moscow.
Russia's investigative committee said Lieutenant General Fanil Savarov died on Monday morning after an explosive device planted under a car detonated. The committee added Savarov was the head of the Armed Forces Operational Training Department. It said one theory being investigated was that the bomb was planted with the involvement of Ukrainian intelligence services. Ukraine has not commented. The committee said Savarov died in hospital as a result of his injuries, adding it had opened an investigation into murder and illegal trafficking of explosives. Investigators have been sent to the scene in a car park near an apartment block in the south of Russia's capital. Images from the area show a badly damaged white car with the doors blown out, surrounded by other vehicles in a parking lot. According to Russian media, Savarov previously took part in combat operations during the Ossetian-Ingush conflict and the Chechen wars in the 1990s and early 2000s, and also did operations in Syria between 2015 to 2016. Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, a number of military officials have been targeted in the Russian capital.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight.
Thank you for watching. Good night.
Newsfirst,